Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so for the first question again, are you okay with this being recorded and on the record?
Yes, I sure am.
And what is your first and last name?
D period C period Stoy. DC Stoy.
And what are your pronouns?
He, him.
So for the first question, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, where do I begin? So I graduated from Loyola Marymount University in LA in 2020. And obviously with 2020, everything with COVID and everything with that happening. So that transition into the say job market wasn't very easy. Let's say for sure to say that. However, so what I did was I ended up I had an English degree from Loyola Marymount University, and I ended up just essentially just really just honing in on my writing and honing in on that talent and that skill and figuring out a way that I can, monetize that. Um, Sorry about that plane going over overhead, but monetize that. And so I ended up writing a book. I was writing a book actually through college, but I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to, put that out and get that officially published. It was just kind of a side note for me. So I ended up actually working on that and worked with Atmosphere Press, a small printing press that are just great people. Was able to work with that and actually came out in 2021. So in 2021, I then also started a clothing line, really honed in again, like I said, on the poetry. I also have a blog that I've been writing through college that's now like around like 50K internationally. Like people are continuing to read that and doing pretty well on that end. So essentially just making things work on that with that. And 25 years old. I come from a sports background, played basketball growing up in life and played some football in high school too. So trying to make that transition out of sports into college was very difficult for me. Well, a little bit difficult. But other than that, yeah, just continuing to strive forward and figure out different ways in which to maximize my talents and stay true to my gifts and prioritize my purpose. So that's me so far.
And during your time in college, you said something about a book. Was that the one which you just recently written, The Unsolvable Intrigue?
Yes, and I have it with me, The Unsolvable Intrigue. Yeah, that ended up being the title, ended up being the whole process for me. Very grateful and thankful again to the people at Atmosphere Press to be able to help me with that, and all those who bought it, and all those who DM'd me or texted me and let me know that this book really helped them and was definitely very influential for them in their life. So, yeah.
And how did poetry influence the production of that book?
Well, poetry, it's an anthology of poetry and short stories. So with it being that, poetry honestly has always been within my veins, I guess I could say, whether it be music, whether it be, even in short stories, whether it be Aesop, um, so many others, Maya Angelou, Wordsworth, Keats, so many. I mean, the list goes on and on. Um, but yeah, poetry was always in my blood. I've always loved the vernacular. I've always loved being able to just speak with people and interact with people. I've always loved being able to listen. I think the key and the skill with poetry is the listening phase with that, and obviously the reading phase. But in that reading is listening and not always applying my own experiences to it. Sometimes take it in as like, oh, this is something new. This is a new work that I haven't experienced, or maybe I have experienced and connect with that way. So yeah, in college, I was taking some poetry classes, and I really just found my niche with that. I really loved it, and it's something that's like, wow, like I really can see how this can make a difference. It's making a difference in my life, so I definitely can see how can make a difference in other people's lives. So yeah, so that was me during college, just taking some great poetry classes with some great professors, which I still in contact with to this day. Um, but yeah, that's essentially what it is for me. Poetry is a way of life. Poetry is a way of life.
And uh, so in your eyes, like, could you expand on that? Like, what is poetry? And like in that way, how is it a way of life?
Yeah. Poetry for me is and is a way of life, a lifestyle that is, it is an expression that is dedicated to the flow and ebbs and the waves and the tides of one's experiences in life, and then commenting upon that in whatever form or artistic form drives you. And for me, poetry is poetry in motion, poetry in routine, poetry in the non-routine, poetry in the way we even hold a conversation, poetry in the way, you know, I look at the world, the way the world looks at me, poetry in, you know, so many different aspects of life. And for me, I think poetry is the quintessential problem solver for sometimes most of our issues at times, if we take a chance to just let it sit and let it soak in and marinate. But obviously, like, you know, we're busy people, so it's difficult to, you know, sometimes find time to like sit in. But sometimes for me, sometimes the simplest one sentence is poetic in nature, and people live poetically in their life, and they might not even realize it. Poetry is a, that's what I mean by poetry is a way of life. Poetry is something that I think is a guidance tool um, in different means, because you read different poets, and with reading different poets, they all have their own unique flair and flavor and their own unique style, their own unique kind of commentary upon life. So they each have their kind of, you know, their own philosophy to an extent. So yeah, I'd say that for me, poetry is uh, it's nuanced. Poetry is nuanced, and in it being nuanced, there's no, sometimes no telling exactly what it distinctly can be for someone as an individual, because it's art, it's creativity, it's an evoking of emotion. Sometimes it's not emotion, sometimes it's strictly, you know, words. Sometimes it can be just so much more than I can ever even dare to explain. You know, I feel honored to even be a part of the poetic community. So yeah, I'd say that was I know that's a horrible take on it,
No, no,
but
no.
yeah, that I'd say that was poetry. That's poetry for me so far at 25. Yeah.
And building on that art form, what got you interested in incorporating poetry into your music?
Yeah. Well, for me, music is another, again, obviously art form, but music is another way of speaking to people. Um, so to me, poetry and music go hand in hand for me. And for me, I figured, like, you know what, the Unsolvable Intrigue, an anthology of poetry and short stories, um, gives insight into why I think life is unsolvable, why it is intriguing, why it is um, so unique and so refined for some, and yet so broad and vast for others, that it has to only be expressed via poetry or via music. So for me, I figured, you know, like, I love music, obviously, I love music, and I love just being able to incorporate, you know, the sounds, sometimes the aesthetic that we can't get just by turning a page. Sometimes it's a, you know, you need the auditory senses, you need that sensory language to be able to really connect. So for me, incorporation of poetry in the music, at least my music, which will be coming soon, is simply just like what I should be doing. It's paying homage to the writing, paying homage to the words, um, in another expression, in another art form. And it's something that I'm really excited and have been really taking very, very seriously. Um, and it will be coming soon, like I said. So, but I definitely want to pay homage to that and make sure it has the respect that is due with poetry and with music. So I'm taking my time, but I want that, you know, it to be quality, not just quantity. So that's something for me with poetry, with music.
And if you're able to answer this, what type of music or like what genre of music do you produce?
If I'm able. uh, Honestly, it depends. It depends because for me, if I was to make an album or an EP per se, if it would be a mixture and an assortment. So the genre, I think, for me would be dependent upon the song and the material that I'm expounding upon. So sometimes it might come out in a you know in a I don't even know how to explain it. Sometimes it'll be expressed in a way that's beyond what we are hearing currently, if that makes sense. So it might sound a little bit different, but then it might sound the same. But then it depends on the listener, it depends on the individual. and I can't express this particular genre because I'd be giving it away. Because as you would read in the Unsolvable Intrigue, it's a nuance. You have so many stories going on with it. You have so many different perspectives going on with it. It's kind of that same feel with my music. It's not just one note. It's kind of multi-dimensional, but it has a common theme. But I won't. Yeah, I won't expound upon the genre or genres um, just yet. It's a surprise.
Thank you. And I was wondering, when or how did you meet Nick? Was this like a time where both of you were learning to write poetry or learning to make music?
Yeah. So the Orange Line Poet, uh, he, I knew he's basically family. I've known him since I was younger. Both of our families are connected. He is basically my cousin essentially. Um, and yeah, I've known him since we were young. We've always talked about, okay, oh, you write too. Okay, cool. What are some of the things you're writing about, some of the things you're expressing, and we connected that way in the poetry area that way, and he's an amazing writer. Like, yeah, he's one of my inspirations, I'd say, as a writer, because he's able to evoke those feelings and those he's able to connect with the audience so in a very strategic, particular way that many people cannot. Um, Many people can attempt to do, but he actually has the formula, and it's genuine. So I think, yeah, the Orange Line Poet, he's an amazing artist. But yeah, we've connected since we've known each other since we were young. Um, yeah, yeah.
And have you two ever collaborated on producing poetry or music?
Maybe, maybe there will be something coming later. You know, um, Things are in the works, and maybe things are not in the works. But honestly, like, you know, poetry, yes, is a collaborative effort, and he's a good friend of mine, and I would love to collaborate with him on something coming soon, hopefully, and we'll see. I'm excited. I'm excited just with my own endeavors. I'm excited for the endeavors he's pursuing. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe.
And how would you describe Nick as a person and as a poet?
Yeah, Nick as a person. I'll knock out that first question. So Nick as a person. Nick is, I'd say, the first thing that comes to mind is honesty. He's honest. He's genuine. Um, he's an authentic person. Again, genuine. Um, he's very, very talented. Uh, he's a great friend, a great person, a really genuine friend. He's wise too. I would say he's very wise. Something that is rare, I'd say today. I think that there's many smart people, which is great, but there's not many wise sometimes decision making within the smart arena, if that makes sense. And again, I'm not saying that, but yeah. What else? What else? Nick as a person. Nick's a very, yeah, kind person. He's a very kind person. He's also a very dedicated and determined person. Very hardworking. Uh, very hardworking. Great work ethic. Yeah, just a great person. One of those people that when you hear he's a great person, and then you meet him, you're like, yeah, he's a great person. So, you know, yeah, I'd say that's Nick for me as a person. He's a great dude, great guy. As a poet, again, to harken back to what I was saying before, as a poet, I mean, he encompasses and embodies all the elements that a poet wants, from my point of view. Um, his style is so like unique, and his again points back to the authenticity within the style. Um, that is something that stands out the most to me, from the Orange Line Poet. It's the style, and the boldness and the creativity to be able to put your vulnerability on a platter and be able to, you know, express that and then give it to the world, and then, not become drowned in the emotions of, okay, this person's saying this about, this person's saying that about. No, he's, strong in that. And I think that's something, again, that is another reason why I'm a good friend of his, because it's like, as obviously a fellow poet and just a friend growing up, it's like, it's respect. It's a respect factor that's like, wow, like, I respect you, man. Like, like, I really admire that. Like, that's something that I want to incorporate more within my own area. So yeah, I'd say that was the Orange Line Poet as a person and as obviously a poet. So yeah, yeah,
And you said earlier that you met him when you were younger. Could
yeah.
you build more on that?
Yeah, yeah. So our families, my parents, his parents, everybody pretty much grew up together essentially, and are connected in some way or another. So yeah, I was born in '97. I think Nick's born in '98. I think, but we are always, always good friends even then. So it wasn't like, you know, but but yeah, I played sports growing up. I think he played some sports too. I think he played football for a little bit, I think. So that was great in terms of connecting on that end. And just as a person, like he was just always a cool guy. Like, just a cool dude. Like there wasn't really anything that overshadowed, his as he got older. There wasn't anything that's like, oh, you've changed. No, he's remained the same person. Obviously, we've encountered different things in life, but he's remained the same person through and through. So definitely respectable and admire that about Nick. Um, but yeah, yeah, just growing up, I think we'd see each other, sometimes in church, sometimes see each other in church. Sometimes we'd see each other, just in passing by. And then just with our families, we'd see each other at events, family gatherings all the time. And it was cool. I mean, it's just another young person around that age that I could connect with. And yeah, yeah, Nick has always been a real one. Always been a great person, good dude. So yeah.
And you said earlier that he was inspiring in a way. Could you also build on that?
Yeah, so he also is a blogger too. So I've read as reading his blog posts and supporting that way. I mean, that's what I mean in terms of his writing style, the Orange Line Poet's writing style, his authenticity in that. I keep saying that authenticity because sometimes I've noticed with some bloggers, not every blogger, but with some bloggers, there appears to be sometimes this almost over melodramatic form of professionalism that causes separation between the reader and the writer. And to me, that gap is what is causing the rift. You want connection, and I think Nick has that connection naturally down in his writing. It's something that's why I said that's inspirational for me, because for me, like it's the same thing. Like I'm trying to gain that connection with my writing, but not trying overboard to be like, I am you. No, it's not like that in that nature. It's more along the lines of you know, here's something that I've going through. Maybe you can connect with this. Or here's something that I'm going through, and maybe you cannot, but listen to what I have to say, and I'll listen to what you have to say, and then we can learn and grow together. I think Nick has that down pat, and I think that's inspirational and something I'm working on, and it's just trying to get better from, and I'm learning from him in that area. So yeah, definitely inspirational.
And speaking about those elements of authenticity and connection, do you think that those are important elements for a poet to pursue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that again, like I said, bridges that gap between writer and audience. Um, that connectivity, that authenticity. I think if you're not being authentic and true to yourself in your art form, your writing, or whatever it might be, um, I think that can lead you down a path of disingenuousness, which tends to lead to heartbreak, I'd say. Not heartbreak in the romantic sense, but heartbreak because there will be a chasm between the writer and their craft after a while. Because it's not authentic, it's not genuine. And if it's not genuine or authentic, they'll think like they're on the right path with something. It's like, oh, this is a business, instead of like a springing forth of what is the purpose of what you're doing. I think with purpose, you really have to be sound in that. And I think in intention, you have to be sound in. And if your intention is to be fake in a poetic lens, that's not the best, I don't think, realm to be fake in. you know, I think there are other realms that cause, for faking. I think poetry is that connectivity, man. That's the lifeblood. That's you know, that's the heartbeat. That's the pulse. That's what keeps us going. That's where all the great writers, like, since back in the day, obviously you have Shakespeare in school and some others, but it's like even if you can't connect with the language, you can connect with the story. You can connect with what the ideas are, what the themes are. You know, I think that's something that's authenticity at its foremost. And they're being authentic to their time and what they thought. I think now even more so, it's important that poets and artists, singers, writers, directors, producers, actors, whoever, are authentic in their craft. Students authentic in what they're doing, like writing a paper. You know, it's not just only what the professor wants to hear, even though I've been there. It's about it's about, you know, like what they genuinely think about this, and then expressing it and learning from the professor. So it's more of a growth, not a just, you know, I'm faking it to make it. But I get it on both sides. But yeah, I'd say that for poetry especially. Yeah.
And uh I guess for like the second to last question, do you have anything to add about your own works?
Yeah, yeah. In terms of authenticity or just in general?
In general.
In general, I think for me, it's a continued growth. For me, the Unsolvable Intrigue was a timestamp of that college time of life. So now as I look back at it, I'm 2 years removed from college. So now as I look back at it, I'm like, wow, like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I remember when I was writing this at this exact time. So that's just something that's interesting moving forward, where it's like each work is a timestamp. Each work is a timestamp. So that's the beautiful nature about poetry. And I think for myself, um, I want to make sure that my work becomes timeless instead of only a timestamp. But then a timestamp can become timeless because it's like, wow, the themes of what was going on in that time still carry over and matriculate over to whatever time comes later. So yeah, I'd say that for my work, I have a lot to work on and a lot to grow with, and but I'm very excited. I think like I've been getting into film and obviously with music and the incorporation of that and producing and the vocality with certain things, and I think that's something that's been great for my poetry because it's helped for me to see. I'm actually reading more now too, and I'm trying to find more time, but reading more now too, you know, and that helps with the writer as well. You know, you're able to read and learn more things on that and really hone your craft. But yeah, I'd say that for as far as poetry, that's something that I'm continuing to work on and continuing trying to get better at, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and I think sometimes again with some people, well, not with some people, but with myself at least, the reason sometimes people ask, side note, but the reason I wear a mask is that with the DC Stoy, with me, it's about the work. It's about the work. And if it's about the work, it's not so much focused on the external as much. Nothing against the external, but for me, it's about what I do, what I write, what I say, you know, different things like that. So people understand, like, okay, it's not to become fixated with just the exterior. So that's something that I've also incorporated into my poetry. It's like, you know, I'm we're all in this together. You know, it's not just like I'm separate outside of the bunch and okay, listen to what DC Stoy has to say from the mountaintops. No, it's not like, you know, come on now. It's like, no, we're all in this together. You know, it's not like that's why I have it. So it's not like I'm just standing out, you know. But yeah, I think that with my poetry is something that I'm really, and my artist work in general is something that I'm excited about and continue to strive forward towards. So.
And the last thing, for the readers, is there a link online where they can view a collection of your written works or your music?
Yeah, yeah. So my music will be coming soon. It'll be on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, everywhere. But I have yet to, you know, obviously release that. But as far as with my poetry and my work, I have a link. Well, actually, my blog site, www.stoyinspiration.com. That's my blog site, and on there, it will actually take you to my clothing area. It also will take you to my book, which is available on Amazon. My Instagram link, or my Instagram handle, or my name is at DC Stoy, lowercase d period c period STOY all together. And from there, I have a link under that, which is a link tree, which gives a breakdown of all the different links and all my work from my book to, you know, YouTube to everything. So from there, those are the areas, the main areas that you can look for that. Specifically my Instagram, specifically, yeah, with Facebook and different stuff like that on the social media end. But yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Have a good one. Yeah.
Thank you. You too. Have a good one.